what we saw was that there was a need for technology innovation in the sector and that there was a need for business model innovation in the cook stove sector. Yet there were few actors that were willing and able to provide grant funding or very high-risk capital to cook stoves and fuels companies in order to overcome that challenge. So the Pilot Innovation Fund was first designed to be grants of $75,000. It's now grants of up to $150,000 US dollars to finance game-changing technology and business model innovations. Since 2013, when the first grants for this fund went out the door, we've funded more than 16 projects over 3 rounds. We have since focused after our second round, following a strategic review, following that strategic review on the second round, we opened up a third round focusing on partnerships and game-changing innovation. The catch or the strings attached to this fund for our grantees are that they have to share their lessons learned, and we have to disseminate that among the sector. So if you are interested for any case studies from previous rounds of the Pilot Innovation Fund, including some Spark Fund case studies, which is another Alliance grant program, there's a link here to the website where you can find available case studies, and then a link to our YouTube webinar page where you can find previously recorded webinars. This webinar today is focusing on one grantee in particular, Ecozoom East Africa. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Hesben Nangena, the Operations Officer for Ecozoom, who can tell you all a bit more about the design of the project and the results on innovative distribution model for pellets in East Africa. So Hesben, if you can hear me, I'll go ahead and let you go from here.
Thank you, Stevie. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Hesben Nangena from Ecozoom. I'm the Operations Officer. Ecozoom got a grant from the GSCC in May 2015, the Pilot Innovation Fund, to pilot distribution of pellet fuel. And ideally this fund was supposed.
Hesben, can you hear us?
Sorry?
Hello, this is
Can you hear me?
from Bangladesh.
Hesben, we have you now.
Hello?
Hello, this is Musalim from SMC Bangladesh. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hesben, we're going to go ahead and go on mute, and then we'll let you go from here.
All right, thank you.
All guests have been muted.
Was to test the Pilot Innovation Fund that we got from the GSCC was to test innovative distribution and customer incentive schemes aimed at increasing uptake of pellet fuel and stoves. The pellet fuel that we piloted in our project, that's how it was packaged in the picture, and we named it Pikapoa. That's a Swahili term meant meaning cooking well. That fuel, we packaged it in 3 bags, the 2 kg, 7 kg and 16 kg bags. And the cost for each of the bags can be seen on the screen there. The stove that we piloted together with this fuel was the Philips microgasifier. It's a biomass burning cook stove made in South Africa, and it works best with pellets. It retails in Kenya at around $128 US, which is around Kenya shillings 13,000. It has a battery which can be charged using a solar panel or the mains electricity, and that battery basically runs a fan which supplies air which assists the combustion of the pellet. ideally the speed of the fan or the air being injected into the stove makes for a very clean burn, and that's why the stove is actually registers very high tiers as per emissions for the IWA tier rating system. As I said earlier, the fund was ideally for us to test distribution models for the fuel. In this project, we piloted 3 distribution models, which I will talk more about as we go along. One of the models was the static reseller, which is using a retailer at a fixed sell point, such as an existing kiosk or shop selling household items. The second distribution model that we piloted was a CHV reseller. CHV stands for Community House Volunteer, who acted as a reservoir for the pellet fuel. The third and last model that we tested was the delivery model, where a bike was used to deliver fuel to the users. As I said, I will talk more about these 3 models as we go along in the webinar. We also got a chance to pilot a customer loyalty scheme, and this scheme was basically to incentivize customers to continue buying and using the pellets, and it was for us to be able also to track each of their purchases. Ideally, how this customer loyalty scheme worked is when a customer bought a 2 kg bag of pellets, 7 kg or 16 kg bag of pellets, they registered a serial number that was posted on that bag of pellets. And for each kg, a customer could get 1 point. Now, if a customer was able to register or get 10 points, they could get an Ecozoom t-shirt if that registration, or if they use those pellets within 7 days. If they registered 50 points within a target number of 50 days, they got a free bag of 2 kg, a free bag of pellets for 2 kg. If they got 100 points, that means they used 100 kgs of pellets within 90 days, they could get the 100 shillings of their time. And if they used 200 kg of pellets, they got 200 points within 180 days, they could get 500 shillings off a solar lantern. Now, the picture shows some of the users who had already worn the Ecozoom t-shirts, and the feedback that we got after, after they won those t-shirts, they say, some of them were saying, when I got the Ecozoom t-shirts, I was very happy and I felt very proud, because now people who doubted the program would think otherwise and also get motivated to use the stove more. They went further and said it also forced some of the people to come and see the stove, and I could explain how the stove was working. That showed us that really the loyalty scheme was working for some of these users. As the pilot picked up, we did face some of the challenges, and one of the major challenges that we faced was the late arrival of the Philips cook stoves. We didn't get them on time, and that really pushed our timelines, or rather hurried us to start the project very late. Also, some of the users were unwilling to be the first ones to use the fuel and the stove. We realized this was very new fuel and a very new stove that they have never seen and used. And for some, they weren't willing, or they were a bit apprehensive of being the first ones to use the product. So they would wait until their neighbors would buy the stove, start using the fuel, and if the feedback from their neighbor was positive, then they would go ahead and also get on board and get their Eco and start using it. This limited the initial number of people that we signed up initially. although we started with the community health volunteers before we opened it up to the rest of the community. Since we signed up very few community health volunteers at the start, we decided to open up the opportunity to the rest of the community so that we can get more numbers signing up. And the next point, the low sign-up rates was, it's more related to the second point, where people were, waiting on each other before they can sign up. Another challenge that we faced was the frequent technical issues with the Philips stove. The Philips stove did break quite a number of times, and we had to replace it under the warranty system with Philips, and that sort of discouraged some of the potential users into signing up for the project because of the frequent breakages. Because of all those challenges that I've enumerated, we had to make adjustments in order for us to increase the uptake of the fuels and the stoves. First, we opened up the opportunity to the rest of the community, as I said earlier, not only the community health volunteers who we started out with. Secondly, we incentivized customers by giving them 50 shillings of airtime for each successful referral. Third, we ran a competition in January 2016 in which the user that referred the most new customers would win a shopping voucher. Again, while this promotion provided motivation for some individuals, it did not generate as many referrals as we had hoped. We also tested the idea of having an agent within the community who could sign up new households as and when they become interested and had the funds available to sign them up. We tested this with our group in one of the regions called Siaya that we piloted in, and trained the Pellet reseller in that region to also take up new users through the stove training, lease agreements, and baseline data filling procedure. The agent was receiving a commission of 500 Kenyan shillings, that's around $5 for every user they successfully signed up. This method still didn't produce as many high numbers as expected because we only got 5 new users through the agent over a period of 11 weeks. Also, the agent wasn't giving the right or the necessary information about the fuel and the lease agreement, which I'll explain more about. And we learned from there that to get a successful agent, we have to really vet them and ensure that they are passing across the right information. Another adjustment that we made was having energy champions within the community. These are already users of the pellets and the stove who are actually using quite a lot of pellets. We were using them, or we decided to use them to spread the notion of the knowledge of the pellets and the good qualities of the pellets to their neighbors and to those who had already signed up but were using very little amounts of pellets. And we successfully, through all these mediums, we successfully registered 85 users spread out, as you can see in the graph, on a monthly basis. And those higher graphs, or those high numbers or high bars that you can see are those sign-up events where we went out to the field and mobilized the community and organized sign-up events and opened it up for anybody who was capable of getting the GECO and was interested in the fuel to sign up. Customers were getting the GECO, the stove, through a lease-to-own model. How the lease works, I will go through that diagram that's on the page down. Customers will make an initial deposit of 1,000 shillings, and they will get a Jiko and a bag of pellets to start with. And before they went on with the product, they would sign a lease agreement which stated that they would be making monthly payments of tri-monthly payments of 1,000 shillings. That's 1,000 shillings every 3 months, which is ideally around $9.8 after every 3 months. And they have to be buying and using pellets consistently for the period of the lease, which was 12 months. So customers were making quarterly payments of 1,000 shillings for a whole year, and by the end of the lease period, they would have made a payment of 5,000 shillings for the Jiko, for the stove. That would put the cost of the stove at 5,000 shillings instead of the 13,000 shillings retail price. The rest, the difference was subsidized by the grant we received from the GLCC. So we decided to subsidize the price of the Jiko to make it affordable. Since it's a very expensive product for the target market, we decided to make it affordable, but get the sales from the pellet, get the profit from the pellet sales ideally, or monitor how the sales were going for the pellets. The 3 distribution models that we piloted in this project were, as I enumerated there, the static reseller, the CHV reseller, and the delivery model. The static reseller, the fuel was sold to users in a pre-existing shop located in the user's neighborhood. The reseller bought fuel from Ecozoom at a wholesale price and sold to users at a retail price, ideally making a small margin. We piloted this model within the Karapul area of Siaya County in the west part of Kenya. For the CHV reseller, it was similar to the static reseller, but in this case the reseller was a community health volunteer. The community health volunteer sold fuel to his fellow CHVs in his neighborhood who already had the stove. And the CHV bought the fuel from Ecozoom at a wholesale price and sold it to the user at a retail price, also making a small margin. So really for these volunteers, it was an income generating activity for them because they are main professionals volunteering for the community. We piloted this distribution model in the Nyalenda region of Kisumu County in the west part of Kenya. For the delivery model, Ecozoom sold fuel directly to the household. Household paid Ecozoom for the fuel via the mobile money service and PESA. Once Ecozoom got that payment, they sent a motorbike rider to deliver the fuel from the warehouse to the household of the user. Ecozoom sold the fuel at a retail price, which was good because Ecozoom in this case, Ecozoom was selling at the retail price, which was making more money in this case compared with the other 2 models. This distribution model was piloted in the Mamboleo region of Kisumu County. If you can compare these models, the pros and cons, for the static retailer, it is similar to the current buying habits. For the pros, it's similar to the current buying habits, so it wasn't very different. It wasn't something very different compared with how the target market was already buying their fuel. They could buy the charcoal through a similar model. Users could buy at their convenience. They could just go to the kiosk and get the fuel whenever they wanted. And because we could work with existing businesses, we didn't have to start a business up from scratch. We could sign up as an existing business and they could act as the reseller. The reseller could also act as a champion of fuel in the community. They could disseminate information on the fuel and the stove, the benefits of the fuel, benefits of the stove to the community. They could act as a point of information or a point of reference for the users of the fuel. it could create income generating activities in the community if that would be an extra income stream for a kiosk, ideally. And it was a low effort to order, processing, and payment tracking. Ecozoom was dealing with just one reseller. So it was easier to process the orders and also to track the payments also, and Ecozoom was also selling in bulk to the reseller. We are not selling one bag or two bags, we are selling in bulk, so it was again easier to deal with a static reseller. For the cons for this distribution model, it was an added cost for the reseller margin, because again, Ecozoom was selling at wholesale, and so as for the reseller to also get a margin. The sales volume could not support many resellers. These static resellers were based in a location where the users were located. And the users were not that many. So we couldn't really sign up so many resellers and make them be profitable as it is, because they were servicing very few people who were buying very few quantities of pellets. And the third point was the reseller were making relatively low margins. They were making up to between 5 to 10 shillings per kg of pellets, depending on the quantity they bought from us. Some customers had to travel long distances to access these static resellers. We tried basing these resellers at a central location, but some of the customers still were living quite a distance from where the kiosk was located, so they had to walk quite some distance to access the fuel. For the community of volunteer reseller, the pros were the CSV could act as the champion of the fuel in the community. CSVs were ideally known and trusted figures in the community, and they used to walk around disseminating health information to the household. As they were walking around, they could also, pass across the messages of the benefits of the pellets and the pellet stove. And also they could act as an example by using the most fuel, and people could learn from them and also, ramp up their usage numbers. The CSVs were trusted and well known in the community. This model could create an income generating opportunity for the CSV, who I said earlier, they were volunteers who were ideally not earning an income. With this model, they could get ideally an income for them. And this model could provide new opportunities for the volunteers to do health promotion, as I explained earlier. As they are going around promoting also the pellets, they could also be promoting or disseminating the health information also. This model was also a low effort for order processing and payment tracking, similar to the static reseller, since we are dealing with one CHV reseller and we are delivering to them also in bulk. The cons for this model were an added cost for the reseller margin. The reseller also had to make some profits, so people had to sell at a lower price so as the reseller could also make a profit from the sales. The CSV may not have business acumen. These were volunteers in the community who are ideally not business people, but who are willing to sell the pellets. They may not necessarily have the business acumen, which in some cases would, not make them be very good resellers in the region or for pellets. The CSV may be busy with other activities limiting availability. CSVs that other activities, as I said earlier, disseminating health information, and actually the CSV reseller that we engaged with in this pilot had a job at a local hospital. which he did during the night. So during the day, he could be doing other activities and not be available to sell the pellets to the customers. For this model also, some customers may have to travel significant distances to the selling point. Again, similar to the static reseller model, some of the customers were located quite a distance from the reseller's location, making them to have to travel long distances to access the fuel. This model may be cumbersome for CHV consumers or customers expect them to deliver. For those customers who, stayed far off distances, some of them expected deliveries by the CHV, and this could be cumbersome for the CHV, as we said earlier, could be having other activities that is involved in. The final model, the delivery model, the cons for this model, there was a high profit margin for Ecozoom since we are selling at wholesale. We are selling direct to the customer. Direct payment cut out risk of inflation by resellers. We found out that resellers, especially for these other fuels, charcoal and the like, used to inflate the prices of their fuel. But in this case, since Ecozoom was selling directly to the end user, there was that cutting out that risk of inflation by the resellers. Customers didn't have to travel to collect the fuel since the fuel was being delivered direct to their homes by Ecozoom. The cons for this model was the high delivery cost. Some customers could order one bag of 2 kg and you have to deliver to them at a very high cost, which ideally Ecozoom was not making money. These were time-consuming deliveries because some customers were located quite a distance away, and the process of them paying and us having, or Ecozoom having to call the motorbike guy to make the delivery, for some of the consumer or for some of the customers, this took quite a long period of time, and they really needed the fuel when they made an order for it. Mobile money payments were quite difficult for some of the customers. Some of the users were not very tech savvy, and they found having to register and having to make purchases using a mobile quite difficult for them. They would rather going somewhere and just buying, handing over the money and getting the pellets at the spot. Individual order processing time was consuming, as I said earlier. Contrary to the two models that we saw earlier, Ecozoom was dealing with an individual customer. Customer making an order of 2 kg, another making an order for 16 kg. We are dealing with them separately, and this took time. And some of the customers really needed the pellets very urgently, or very urgently. For these customers, again, waiting for the delivery was an inconvenience to them. Some ran out of fuel in the middle of their cooking event and they needed fuel immediately. Waiting for that delivery to reach them was inconvenient at that point of their cooking event. For the trade distribution model, the cost of delivery direct to the household was, as the table is outlined there. For the static reseller, the cost to deliver 1 kg of pellets was 4.3 shillings. For the CSV model and reseller, the cost of delivery was 3.6 shillings per kg. For the delivery model, it had 2 stages. Some users preferred collecting the fuel from an out facility. Those who are located close to that out facility preferred getting it from that facility. So we Ecozoom delivered the fuel to the health facility and the customer picked it from there. The cost of that delivery was around 5.1 shillings per kg. For those customers who preferred direct household delivery, the cost was significantly quite high at 40.2 shillings per kg. This cost is significantly higher mainly due to small volumes of pellets being delivered on each trip compared to the bulk deliveries to the vendors in the static and CHV model. It is obvious that these individual household deliveries are not really cost-effective or it's not really a cost-effective approach as it is. These costs give an indication of what to expect but are likely to be high during the pilot phase compared to what can be achieved if the project was to scale up for the long term. And we are considering economies of scale, that is. During our pilot, we paid a higher price for the delivery since it was ideally a new concept to the riders, and we were unable to guarantee consistent demand for the pellets. If the business was at a larger scale, it could look into purchasing its own motorbike with a dedicated rider and we could negotiate favorable rates with service providers due to higher demand for the services. An investment in motorbike capable of carrying the weight of the fuel in rugged terrain could be around 1,960 to $2,140 with a monthly running cost of around 20,000 shillings, which is around $294. During the pilot, we averaged monthly sales of around 385 kilos of pellets, which, considering the motorbike running costs alone, would still represent a delivery cost of 52 shillings per kg if we had our own bike. Hence, the delivery model is not cost effective until large volumes are achieved. During early stages of the business, it's likely that the above costs are representative of what could be achieved, and the use of external delivery riders is beneficial. The use of external delivery riders is the best option ideally.
Husband, sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know we're getting close to the question and answer time. So I know you have a few slides on the conclusions of the commercial viability of the project, but if maybe we can run through those in a couple of minutes so we can allow time for questions, that would be great.
All right, thank you, Stevie. The conclusion for this model was convenience and reliability is key when considering fuel distribution models. Fixed cell phone seems to be the most preferred method for customers to access their pellets. Getting the right reseller is important. A reseller who can act as a point of information for the customer is important. Delivery model is convenient but expensive to operate unless higher sales volumes are achieved. Profit margins for resellers would have to increase to make the business more attractive to resellers. And also, we realize there is no clear trends linking pellet usage to the different distribution models from the pilot. In conclusion, in summary, Ecozoom was to scale the distribution network moving forward. We need to do a few things. First is concentrate on building up a network of basic resellers, well known in the community, and locate them as close as possible to the highest density of customers. Increase the incentives to the resellers to motivate them. Delivery model could supplement the static resellers for users organized in groups, especially in more rural areas. These users can do weekly orders and pay together, and then fuel delivery can happen as a group. Commercial viability of the pellet distribution. The business has to generate sufficient profit for Ecozoom to justify further investment and continued operations. Local sourcing of pellets through on production or buying for local producers is essential to lower the fuel costs. And when production assures the highest profit margins but requires significant investment. There is currently limited local production of pellet fuel in Kenya. Ecozoom imported pellets from a supplier in Zambia, which is an expensive option. Low-on production, while giving the most control over the supply chain and highest profit margin, requires a significant investment in setting up a pellet production facility, especially one capable of producing high-quality pellets at scale. We did an analysis for the cost to the end user for distributing pellets. We considered two scenarios. One scenario was assuming local purchase or production based on the pilot costs. As I said earlier, we used pellets imported from Zambia. Due to the high cost of overland transportation and clearing charges, the cost of the pellets landed in Kenya was approximately 60 shillings per kg. To encourage users to switch to the fuel during the pilot and to also reflect the cost that should be realistic for locally sourced pellets, they were sold to retailers at approximately 40 shillings per kg during the pilot. Hence, ideally, the grant subsidized the cost of the pellets by approximately 20 shillings during the pilot. Based on research of pellets and briquette manufacturers in Kenya and abroad, we estimate that if we were to source pellets from a local manufacturer in Kenya, the lowest price we could get would approximately be 15 shillings per kg. If we were to invest in our own production, the cost of producing the pellets could be somewhere between 8 and 12 shillings, depending on the scale and efficiency of the operation. These are, however, estimates and further testing and research would need to be done to get a more accurate cost. In scenario 1, as can be seen in the table, we assume that the pellets will be purchased locally at a cost of 15 shillings per kg. On top of this, we have added an additional cost involved in getting the pellets to customers as based on what we incurred during the pilot phase of the project. As you can see from the table, considering all the additional costs on top of the actual cost of the pellet, when selling at 40 shillings, it's less than the cost of reaching the customer, meaning that we'd actually be losing money. The following should be noted that these costs are based on data from the pilot that we ran. Storage costs are high as we used a professional third-party logistics provider for handling our stock to offer the best security and management. Costs for packaging and running material were high due to the small quantities and ad hoc purchasing during the pilot period. If purchases were made in larger quantities, it would be possible to negotiate a more favorable rate and purchase direct from the manufacturers. The issue of value-added tax is somewhat of a gray area for sustainable fuels, and many suppliers of fuel such as briquettes believe they are not subject to this tax. However, during import of pellet fuel into Kenya for this pilot, while it was exonerated for import duty, it was subjected to VAT by the government of Kenya. Hence, in the above or in the table that you can see, we are assuming VAT at 16% would be paid on the fuel to be on the side of coal and drilling. Paying these taxes is a big challenge for sustainable fuels that are competing against charcoal that's commonly traded informally, hence rarely subjected to tax. While the costs incurred during the pilot give us a good indication of what could be achieved when starting the business and operating at a small scale, it's felt that the costs could be further streamlined if economies of scale were achieved, which brings us to the second scenario. Scenario 2 is assuming local production and the optimized costs in the value chain. This scenario shows the estimated cost in reaching the customer with further optimization of the value chain. In this scenario, we assume that Ecozoom can produce the pellets for 12 shillings per kg and storage will be on site, hence reducing the cost of storage, that is. By increasing the volume of business, we'll be able to negotiate more favorable rates for delivery and packaging, materials. The scenario also assumes the discussion with the government of Kenya will clarify that pellet fuel is in fact exempt from VAT, as is the case for other sustainable energy products such as solar and clean cook stoves. In this optimized scenario where the costs are streamlined and VAT excluded, the potential profit margin rises to 14 shillings per kg, making the business much more viable and attractive. However, feedback from the pilot showed that either the sales price would need to decrease or the selling price increase to give more margin to retailer to scale up the distribution network. An increase in the retail price would be challenging at this stage when the product is new in the market, and hence it's likely the selling price may need to drop slightly. This analysis shows that there are many cost variables that affect the profit margin when distributing and selling pellet fuel to households, and each one would have to be optimized to make the business viable. However, these optimized costs are still assumptions, and further testing at scale would have to be done to understand what could realistically be achieved. It should also be of note that reaching this scale will take considerable time and investment, as highlighted by our pilot. This analysis does not consider the investment that would be needed to gain a market, but just shows the potential profits once that market was gained. During this pilot, the two scenarios that you have seen of local production versus importing pellets were compared based on initial program assumptions. During the analysis, they used the levelized cost of energy as a parameter to compare the total cost of producing 1 ton of pellets. This analysis showed that the levelized cost of energy for 1 ton of pellets produced locally was $287 per ton, compared to $467 per ton for 1 ton of pellets imported into the country, making local production the most economically viable or the most economical option in the long term, even when considering the upfront investment costs. For local production, the main costs involved are ideally labor and upfront facility investment, whereas for pellet imports, the major costs are the cost of the pellets themselves and shipping, that's logistics. However, if Ecozoom was to move ahead with local pellet production, it's likely that it would have to continue using pellet imports to sustain the market while a production facility became operational.
Husband, I think we're getting close to the end of the allotted time that we have, so if we could just wrap it up in the next minute so we can get started with some of the questions that are coming in, that would be great.
Alright, let me just run it out quickly. In conclusion, on commercial viability of the pellet distribution, importing pellets isn't commercially viable. Achieving high usage rates is critical for making the household market commercially viable. Viability of these household markets requires a large number committing to switching to using pellets for all their cooking needs. Cookstove affordability is also essential for increased uptake. Institutional and industrial customers are also essential for a more viable pellet production facility. Based on all these challenges that I've enumerated at this stage, Ecozoom is not really intending to scale up its sales and distribution of pellet fuel, and does not intend to invest in a pellet production facility in Kenya for now. GSCC, the lab, could however consider support on further tests on business models and approaches to increase uptake of alternative fuels, and supporting stove manufacturers to improve usability and reliability of gasifier technologies and opportunities to reduce costs. The reason Ecozoom is ideally not committed to scaling up the production of local production is. We don't really feel the housing market as it is right now will be viable or will be profitable for the company to invest in at the moment. Thank you, and any questions I'll be glad to answer. Thank you, Stevie.
Thank you very much, husband. And I know there's a lot of material that you guys have generated over the past year and a half as part of this pilot process. So thank you very much for walking us through it. For those of you who are interested in a lot more of the specifics around this program, husband Laura Patel and team at Ecozoom have drafted up a 50-page, I think, report on a lot of the specifics, including the feedback specifically from the customers about the stove and the fuel itself. That report, along with the recording of this webinar, will be made available online under that case studies link in the previous slides for the case study, and then the webinar on our YouTube page. We do have a couple of specific questions coming in, and these are great. Husband, do you have maybe a couple of extra minutes after the turn of the hour to stay online in case there are additional questions?
Definitely I can see him.
Perfect. So before we jump into some of the specific questions coming in from the chat, and please do continue to add questions in the chat box, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that came out in your report, but we just didn't have time to cover in this particular webinar around the actual average use of pellets in the household. So, and this is something I see that happens quite often with program plans or financial models for renewable fuel businesses, where the companies estimate generally a much higher usage of fuel than what ends up actually happening in the project or the business. I think Ecozoom had estimated that each household, active household, would use between 1 and 1.5 kgs of pellets per day. Can you talk a little bit about what generally you saw in terms of percentage of active users across the three business models, and maybe the realistic average pellet rates in terms of kgs per household per day?
Yeah, I agree with you. In this pilot, customers, we found out that they were using around 0.35 kgs per day, which was quite low compared with the estimated 1 to 1.5 kgs per day. And the actual usage for all the three models, we found that most of the users, let me just say that 30% of users were top to, for each model, were top to medium to top users ideally. Just a minute. Thank you for waiting. As I was saying, we found out that, okay, majority of the users would say over 50%, or on average 50% for all the three models were low users. But nearly 30% were between medium to high usage for each of the models ideally. And we categorized medium users as users who are using an average of between 0.2 kg to 0.39 kg, and high or top users have been those who are using between or an average of 0.4 kg per day. The low users were those who are using 0.1 kg per day and less, and those were the majority.
Thanks. And again, these charts will be available in the report. And husband, I just have one more broad thematic question, and then we, again, have lots of specifics on the setup of the program. One thing I think that came out, didn't necessarily was able to come out in this presentation as much, was the importance of the partnership with the NGOs that connected you to the community health volunteers. Could you talk a little bit about the specifics of, or some of the challenges and some of the advantages of partnering with an NGO as a for-profit social enterprise? I know that there are sometimes a lot of people who are looking for businesses to partner with NGOs, and sometimes that's easier said than done.
Yes, Julie. For this project, we work closely with FAP, which is a non-profit organization focusing on healthcare innovations, to use the network of community health volunteers as an entry point into the community. These community health volunteers are organized in groups, community units, and they're already known in the community, which makes them a very, good way of approaching the community through already known people. So this was a very good strategy that we used to enter into the community. I don't know whether that answers your question, or I could explain more.
No, that answers. I think I didn't know if there were any particular challenges about the way that your company worked versus, say, a nonprofit organization and making that partnership successful.
As you know, our company previously had been working with the same organization to sell some of our other products, cook stoves and solar lights. We have been working with other, non-profit organization using their, volunteers and their coverage to, market some of our products. And it has been working pretty well, which informed us actually to also use the same model in our pilot project. And our previous project selling through this organization proved, let me say, not very successful, especially some of the community units not being able to clear their credits or their debts. But in this case, we decided, since it was more of an engagement with the community and it's more of a research, we could work and see how it goes on. I mean, it was a bit different with how we were working with our other products, ideally.
Thanks, Hassan. And we have some questions coming in, a couple from Dr. Paul Anderson, just around the current status of the project. So Dr. Anderson was interested in the tellable number of Phillips stoves now in the project, and sort of how many of them are actually in use with pellet fuel.
Sorry, I didn't catch that one. Could you repeat it, please?
How many Phillips stoves were distributed in the project, and of those, how many of them are currently in use with pellet fuel?
We distributed 85 stores to 85 households. We got 10 returns, so we have 75 stores out in the field being used with pellet fuel.
And you're still currently servicing orders for customers who request fuel?
We are still servicing orders as and when they come for customers.
Perfect. And the next question coming in from, I believe, Mr. Anwar Morsalan, who asked how many households does a community health volunteer cover in a month, and also asks if they are paid workers of Ecozoom, and how they are recruited, or how many were recruited.
CHVs are not employees of Ecozoom. We partnered with them. We partnered with one of them to be a reseller of our pellet fuel, and they were making their income from the sales of the pellets. I did a community unit features around 20 to 40 community house volunteers. And in one community unit, there can be up to 4,000 or more households. And each of the community house volunteers could cover between 50 and 100 households.
Thank you. And I think this is the last question, unless we see anything else come in through the chat box. This question comes from Francis Metallo. Francis asks, what are these pellets made of? What is their heat intensity for how long they can cook before needing replacement?
The pellets are made from sawdust, which is waste sawdust, which is compressed at a very high temperature and pressure. This gasification gives them a very high energy content and they produce a very hot flame when heated. When burning in the Philips pellet stove, they can take between 30 to 45 minutes before they need more replacement.
Fantastic. And I'll add that I believe the results of the controlled cooking tests with certain foods in Kenya are available in the full report.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, I just want to thank everyone again, especially husbands, for joining us and sharing all this information, for all of the participants and your very great questions. As I mentioned, we will work, it's at least 24 hours before we can get the recording up on the website, but we're going to do that as soon as we can. And then the full report is also going to be available in 24 hours or so on our website in the case studies. If you have any other questions, our contact details are here. And thanks to Kavanaugh Livingston for being the, master of ceremonies and pulling this all together and sharing the new partner information. I hope you found this as valuable as we did.
Thank you.
Thank you.